Okay, now let's take a look at what the ethics and ownership and the code of ethics that relate to the ACM association that have been put forward by the Association for Computing Machinery (ACM) and the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers (IEEE). Now, basically, these code of ethics are have been put forward for individuals that are operating in the fields of engineering and technology. Now, these codes of ethics are as follows. The basic points are revolving around these keywords. We'll address these keywords and see what the keywords, how they relate to the concept of ethics on and on. Okay. Now, first, public. What does it mean? Now, when we talk about public in the domain of ethics, basically it means that as a software engineer or any type of engineer, it's engineering and technology. So if you are an engineer, since we are talking about computer science, so let's stick to software engineering. So if you are a software engineer, you will act that inconsistently with public interest. So if you're developing a software or you're developing a software tool or system, you will always keep the public interest and their benefit in mind. So that is your first and foremost. You are allowed to go against your clients even if the clients are causing asking you to do something that is against public interest. So first and foremost is that you should always act in such a way that your actions, your products benefit society and the public. Okay. Second, client. If you are working with a client, that client could be your boss or someone who has approached your organization to develop some software. If you are working with a client, you should take measures that are acting in the best interest of your client and employer. However, they should be at the same time consistent with public interest. So for example, you have a client who approaches you and he says that I own a company and I have a lot of employees, but I'm concerned of my uh, employees' personal lives coming in, interfering with their work life. So to avoid this, I want to be able to monitor their private messages so that I can keep a check on every employee who is not, giving their 100%. Now, just by listening to this, you will realize that this is not right. Nobody should have a right to interfere with someone's private lives, may it be your boss or anyone else. Nobody has the right to do that. Now, if say, for example, the client has approached me or my software house to develop a software that can do this, then I am not obligated to satisfy my client because the request that he's putting forward is against public interest. However, if there is no conflict of interest with public, I can go ahead and provide my best possible services for my client. And by best possible services, I mean with respect to the budget, the time, my expertise, the client's requirements, all of the best possible services that I can come up with, I will provide with my client. I will keep my client's interest at a priority, and provided that my client has not put forward a request that is against public interest. Then we got the third aspect. Third, product. By product, we mean that as a software engineer, I will be working on some software tool, some software product. I will make sure that my practices, my efforts are in line with making the best possible product of the highest professional standards. So I will not spare any effort towards creating the best possible product that I can do with my available resources. Again, it has to be specified that, again, considering your circumstances, what is the best possible solutions that you can come up with? Whatever you can come up with at that time, that is your ethicals, that is your code of ethics with respect to your product. So whatever product you're putting forward as a software engineering, it is your duty It is your ethical, moral duty to make sure that you put forward your best possible product. Then we have judgment. By judgment, it means the software engineers shall maintain integrity and independence in their professional judgment. So if you have thought of something being wrong and you don't want to do it, it's unethical, it's not in public interest, whatever it is, you should not ever deviate from that judgment. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Nobody can pressure you. You cannot, your boss can't threaten that you will be fired. No, stick to your judgment. Uphold it. If your boss says that, okay, we're running short of time, forget testing. We don't have time for this. Let just launch the software with the bugs in it. So what? Let it go. Now this is wrong. I will not allow to do it. I won't be going with it. Boss says no, you will be fired. I don't care. It's not right. I cannot let you do this. Okay. So you will not, you will keep your integrity, you will keep independence with respect to your professional judgment. And your professional judgment again should be in line with client, product, and most importantly, the public. Finally, management. Then we got management. Software engineer and managers and leaderships shall subscribe and promote an ethical approach to the management of software development and maintenance. So if, say, for example, at some point you become, you reach a stage that you are leading a whole team of software developers and your team is trying to create software at some time, at some duration, at under a certain time and budget constraint. Now, it is your goal as the team leader to make sure should be your goal as a team leader to ensure that you promote the best possible and highest ethical standards to your team members as well to create that software. So what that means is that you should not indulge in team members copying other stuff. You should try to encourage your team members to come up with original stuff. No plagiarism, no using of any, uh, uh, copyrighted software or code in any way. You should promote ethical standards as a team. So if you are the one who encourages using pirated or plagiarized work, then you are not promoting ethical standards in terms of software team management. So you should always keep that in mind, that you are now acting as a team leader, and if you promote ethical practices, your team will follow the same practices. Then profession. In terms of profession, software engineers shall advance the integrity and reputation of the profession consistent with public interest. It should be known to the public that software engineers are have such a high standard, such a high moral standing, that they can be trusted in any way. They can be trusted to put out the best possible software. They can be trusted to uh, be assigned a task and be trusted to put forward the result of that task in the best possible way. They can be trusted to always work in the public interest. Unlike, say, hackers who or people who have malicious intent who are working online. Unlike them, they cannot be trusted. So that's wrong. As a software engineer, software developer, you should be trusted to be in such a way that you put out a product that is of highest standard. And if you are working with personal data, you should be trusted to not leak out that personal data in any way. And it should be also trusted that you as a software engineer will always work in the best interest of the public. Then we have colleagues. For colleagues, as a software engineer should be fair and supportive of their colleagues. So if you are working in an environment where you have to be collaborating with many team members, you should work in a way that supports them. You should work in a way that encourages them, does not bring them down, does not hurt them in any way. So as an ethical worker, you try to lift them up, try to support them in any way you can, instead of breaking them. No like pulling, no any negative actions. You see, ethics, we're talking about ethics here. Leg pulling is not illegal. It's unethical. You won't be, hung up by your neck because you said something behind someone's back in front of your boss. That's not how it works. But it's unethical. You shouldn't do it. On the other hand, you should be supportive to your colleagues. So as with all, professionals, they should be supportive to their colleagues. And that's what this point relates to. And finally, self. Software engineers shall participate in lifelong learning regarding the practice of their profession and shall promote an ethical approach to the practice of the profession. Very important with respect to people who are working in the computer science field. You have to keep yourself updated with the latest technologies. In terms of software development and software solutions, you have to be kept up to date with the latest trends, latest tools available for software developers. It is your responsibility. It is your ethical, moral responsibility to be up to date. Now, if you're not up to date, how will you be able to provide up to date solutions to your clients? So that's why it's very important that you keep yourself in the loop with the latest trends and latest technologies. And also, you should be also promoting the ethical approach towards development as well. So, as with any profession, you should involve in a lifelong learning. Keep yourself updated with the newest technologies, newest trends as well. So these are basically what the code of ethics, the basic code of ethics relate to, and they have been laid out by these two organizations, and they should be the basic foundations for any ethical software engineer in practice today. Okay, now let's have a look at what your software licensing and the different versions we have with respect to software licenses. Okay, first of all, we need to understand the difference between bespoke software and off-the-shelf software. Now, bespoke software is type of software that is created for one client only. So all of the requirements that you put into that software are laid out or defined by the client that you're making the software for. And basically that software will be used by that client alone. It's not made for anyone else. The motivation behind creating a bespoke software is that uh, my client needs some software solution for his business, and the current solutions that are available in the market are not sufficient for his problems. Or it is also possible that my client is very secretive about his data and he wants to make use of only his own customized software. Okay, so that's one option. On the other hand, we have off-the-shelf software. Now, off-the-shelf software is one software created for a very large audience. Now, such type of software is packed with features. Now, why are they loaded with so many features? Well, because they are targeting a very wide audience. So obviously they have to come equipped equivalently. So if you think you have a problem that you can be solved by an off-the-shelf software, that's great. That won't cost you much because creating a software from scratch is expensive. On the other hand, if you have some solution available in the market, that's a relatively cheaper alternative to go to. So when you talk about commercial software, and basically it's the software that as an owner, as a vendor, I sell to a general user for some purchase or some basic upfront fee or an annual license or whatever it is. So it's like in any way, if you look at it, a commercial software is no different than any other commercial product. So if, say, for example, a shoemaker is making shoes, and those shoes will be used by the general public. Same thing goes with the software. You are creating software which will eventually benefit the general public, and for which you had to obviously charge the general public for in your services. It is created and made available for sale by a company that is aiming to make a profit. There is, however, a significant difference. If you buy a computer, you become the owner, but if you buy software, you do not become the owner. That's very interesting. You don't own the software, you become the owner of the computer that you just purchased. But the software that you just purchased, that is not yours. The ownership of that software, for example, Microsoft Word, the ownership of Microsoft Word will remain with Microsoft. And they are simply allowing you to use it based on a end user license or or some sort of purchasing agreement. But the software still remains with the original user. They have not handed over it to me. They will not say that Microsoft is no longer Microsoft's product, it's Hassan's product. They will not say that. Okay. It is normal that the software license has to be paid, but for there are multiple or the options that might be available. A fee is paid for each individual copy of the software. That's also possible. So each time you buy a software version, you pay for the license. It is also possible that the company might have an option of buying a site license, which allows a defined number of copies to be running at any one time. Most software houses and business organizations, they buy software such as Microsoft Office using this method. So they basically purchase one license, and they're allowed to use that license. They're allowed to give access to that software to say 10 people. 10 people can make use of that software alone, right? So that's also possible. And then special rates may be available for educational use. So if you're a school, education institution, some software houses, so for example, Microsoft, considering Microsoft, how they'd also do this, they will allow you a certain number of free licenses that you can use for your educational institute, or not even, maybe not even free. They may allow a very cheaper rate, considering that you are an education institute, to promote your software to be used by young people in your school. A company that normally sells the software license may sometimes provide a license free of charge. There are possibilities. Now, if you're not paying for the software, if you're paying for the software, it's commercial software. But if you're not paying for the software, we have a couple of options that you can use. Then these are free, okay? First option is known as shareware. Now in shareware, it is a commercial software which is made available on a trial basis for a limited time. It might be the full package available at a time of or limited version. A beta version of a new software may be considered to come as a shareware category as well. So imagine that you just installed a antivirus on your computer, but the antivirus comes with a couple of license options. One is known as the free version, then there's the premium version, and then there's the base version, the home version, then the school version, and then there's the premium version. Now, the base version is free. You can download it, install it on your computer, and it's available to you for only 1 year. After that, you're gonna have to purchase the license, any one of the license, home, student, or whatever it is, but you're gonna have to purchase it. But for that 1 year, you're using that software for free. And after that 1 year passes, if you want to continue using that software, you will have to pay for some sort of license. And such arrangements also mean that your software may not, your trial version software may not show its complete features. In which case, to avail complete features such as the premium version, you will have to pay for a fee. Now, basic antivirus is enough to protect your computer. But if you want to use the same sort of antivirus for your cell phone and other computers as well, and your server as well, then you'll have to buy the premium upgraded version. So this is what shareware means. So if you want the basic version or it's a free version, it's the basic motive behind shareware is to give you a taste of how that software works, to give you invite you for further using. So it's a sort of advertisement method. So just give you an idea of what the software will experience, if software experience is like, and if you like it, you will hopefully buy the complete version. Similarly, then we have a freeware. Now, freeware might be a limited version, a full package, or possibly an earlier version. The difference is that there is no time limit for the license. So you download the software and you use it for as long as you want. It's complete, but you don't have any source code for it, and it might not be a lot of features in it as well. But if you can get your job done with it, this is a very good option. It's free for as long as you want to use. So, for example, Skype is a good option. Skype is free to use, and we don't get the source code, of course, but anyone can use it for free. So one, or that's one example of, or it's also possible that my freeware that I'm talking about is actually one part of a full package deal, kind of like how shareware works, but this is completely free to use for the entire time you want. Shareware does also do the same thing. It's a limited version of full package, but shareware has a time limit on it. Freeware has no time limit on it. Whatever license obtained by the user of software source code will not be provided, neither shareware nor freeware. Examples of when commercial software can be justified include the software is available for immediate use and provides the functionality required. So if I want a software right now and the software I can see can provide the requirements that I'm looking for, go ahead, get the commercial software. A software has been created to be used in conjunction with already installed software. So you're currently using a set of applications on your computer, and you can see that with this additional application, you can add features to your current setup. So that's a good option here. There will be continuous maintenance provided, support provided. Obviously, all commercial software that is created will go through several updates and patches. So what that means is that software is being constantly worked on. People are working on it, and any updates that come into the software that are removing bugs will be available to you as well. Taking advantage of shareware might allow suggestions to be made as to how the software could be improved. So if you're looking at a beta version requires the public feedback, and that feedback will allow a better improvement, more improvement in the software. So this is a general perception that beta versions allow for they also report bugs as well as the general feedback the public allows for a better quality software. Shareware can be often sufficient. Shareware can often offer sufficient functionality to serve users' limited needs. So as mentioned before, commercial softwares, or sorry, off-the-shelf softwares that are created for the general public, they have a lot of features in them. And you might not need all of them, but someone will need some subset of those features. So they have created one size that fits all. Now let's talk about licensing that does allow you source codes. Shareware and freeware does not allow you source code, but these licenses can allow for source codes. For open licensing, there are two major options underway. Both are global non-profit organizations. They are very similar in what they provide, but there is a difference in their underlying philosophies. The first one is known as the Open Source Initiative. It makes an open source software available. The philosophy here is that the use of open source software will allow collaborative development of the software to take place. The software is normally made available free of charge. The source code is provided. The user is free to use it, modify it, copy it, or distribute it in accordance to the terms defined by the license. So the basic purpose behind open source is that you want a large community to be able to support the growth of that software. So based on that, it will allow the software to be growing as a community effort, and anyone who thinks they have these technical skills and the proper ideas to improve on that software, they can. And for that, they will be able to download it for free, use it for free. They will have access to the source code. So that's why they can modify it, copy it, and redistribute it. But when they do distribute it, it has to be in accordance to the license that was originally used when the software was created. So we'll be looking at some examples in a bit, but this is what open source software does. Similarly, there's another organization that does something similar that's known as the Free Software Foundation. We just looked at the open source initiative. Now we look at the Free Software Foundation. Free Software Foundation is so named because the philosophy is that users should be free to use software in any way they wish. Software is not provided entirely free though. There is a small free fee to cover distribution costs. As opposed to open source software, there is no charging whatsoever, but the free software does require some charging, and that's a very small fee. And that is only because of the distribution costs. The free software is still open source. However, there is a special feature in the license that is known as copyleft. We might have heard of copyright, and copyright basically means that if I created some content, may it be a musical file or musical composition or a book or say a software, if I have the copyrights to it, that means I am the sole owner of that software. I determine what's going to happen with that software. I am entitled to the earnings of that software. That's what copyright means. Only one person is in control. However, there's some relaxation with copyleft. Now, what are those relaxations? This is the condition that if the software is modified, the source code for the modified version must be made available to other users under the same conditions of users. So if I create a software and I allow a copyleft modification agreement, that means if I have, for example, allowed that software to be used for schools, for example, I allowed it to be used for schools. If say someone tries to modify that software, and they can because I'm using the free software initiative, they can modify it, yes, because they have access to the source code. But if they distribute it, they will also distribute it. They should also allow schools to use that software as well, because I, the original creator, had made this in the license. Now, every other person who uses this software, modifies this software, first of all, it's not mentioned here, but they will also, have to acknowledge the original creator, which is me, and they will also have to follow the same principles that were being used by me. In which case, I was pro schools. They will have to be also pro schools. Examples of when using open source software can be justified is that full functionality needed can be provided at most in nominal cost. The software could provide the required functionality with just a few modifications to the source code. A consortium of developers are collaborating in producing new software suite. And basically, if you have a consortium of developers, these developers are no ordinary developers. They are experts. So basically, you have a software created by a very large community of experts. The future developments of the software or the continuous provision of existing software is controlled by the user. So you are in control. If you want to modify something, you can. And you have access to the source code as well. So these are the benefits, and this is why open source software is justified. Okay, let's look at a few points that I have discovered from this link. I'll put the link in the description as well. Now, basically, it has some few points regarding open source as well as free software. Let's check this out. Open source software must adhere to the following criteria. First of all, open source allows for free distribution. As we saw, free software requires some distribution cost, but open source has free distribution of software, no cost whatsoever. The source code should be publicly available. There should be one server that's accessed by all public. You can download it, anyone can download it. The software can be modified and distributed in a different format from the original software. So I can recreate it, I can modify it, and then distribute it according to how I modified it. The software should not discriminate against persons or groups. The software should not restrict the use of other software. So if you want to link third-party software with this current software, you can do that. That's fine. On the other hand, let's look at free software. The 4 pillars of freedom. The freedom to deploy the software for any use case without any restrictions. the freedom to study how the software works and modify it according to your needs and preferences, and the freedom to freely redistribute the software to assist someone in need. The redistribution can be done at a nominal cost, or possibly if uh, you know the distribution is not that expensive, that no cost at all. But as opposed to open source, which just flatlines it that no cost, free software may cost you something based on the distribution costs that are involved in distributing the software towards you. The freedom to enhance the performance of the software and release your enhancement for the community benefit, both programmers and non-programmers. You can do this at a cost again or at no cost, because again, distribution cost to be considered. Here are some of the most popular types of licenses that define free software. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology license, MIT license. This is a permissive license, but permissive license means that derivative work can have different licenses. So if I am creating a work that is derived by some original work, then my derived work can follow a different license. It can have its own constraints. I'm not entirely bound to follow the license restrictions by the original creator. The place limited for instructions on software reuse. That places limited restrictions on software reuse. Then we have the second one, the GNU, the General Public License version 2. This copyleft license, which is again derivative work, will have the same restrictions as previous one. Now, as opposed to MIT, the derivative work can have different licenses. A copyleft restriction causes the derivative work to have the same restrictions as the original creator. Gives user the freedom to run, study, and make improvements to the software. Finally, we got Apache license v2. This is also a permissive license like this one that mandates preservation of the copyright notice and disclaimer. So basically, you have to, follow the copyright notice that was originally mentioned in the original version. Then we got BSD licenses. They are a set of non-copyleft licenses that allows the code to part of software that distributed using some other license that gives minimal restrictions on the use and distribution of the software. So basically, they're non-copyleft licenses. That means if I have created a, what you call it, derivative software, then that derivative software has minimal restrictions on the use and redistribution of that derived software. So these are four common licenses that are used with respect to your open source initiative or free software initiative.